Hey, it's Samantha Hartley with the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This season, we've been talking about management consulting. And today, on the last episode of the season, I wanted to talk about the power of saying no and why it's so hard, especially sometimes for women. My consulting career began after I had said no in a very big way. I left my corporate job, like a lot of my clients and perhaps you. I said no to those conditions, to the work environment, to the lack of opportunity, to the things that no longer suited me and who I was and where I was. And if you have left such a thing in the past, or if you think about a big no that you have said in your life, we don't always say it because we feel like we have a lot of choices. In my situation, at the time, I felt like I didn't have any other choice but to say no. The work was killing me. It was destroying my health. And I saw many others who were in the same situation. It was a toxic environment for me. I didn't feel that I was fulfilled. There were many terrible things there. And yet saying no was so difficult. So I had kind of a final straw and left. And in retrospect, on examining that, I realized I had many choices. I could have totally stuck it out. I could have turned to other ways of coping with where I was. And yet no was the way for me to leave. And in fact, I didn't leave to another opportunity. I left to a completely blank slate and kind of jumped off a cliff, metaphorically, into having no job at all. And I ended up taking a year off and really thinking about what I wanted. So if we reflect on why people don't say no more often, obviously fear is the big one. There was certainly reason to be fearful when I left. But for me, staying was a bigger no than leaving and going into the unknown. So if you look at big situations in your past where you have said no, like, what did it take for you to get to that? Was it very easy for you to say, I'm done with this? Or was it really like the 11th hour or the very, very final straw? So I'm going to give 5 examples from our work that you may come across in consulting. And I want to look at your opportunities to say no and how you can use those to cultivate something different. A lot of times we say that, when you say no to one thing, you're actually saying something, yes to something bigger. And I don't know that it's always bigger and more obvious. I think it's a different kind of a yes. And it's really important for us to be in touch with what that yes is when we say no to something. So in my case, I was saying yes to better health, better opportunities, a way that I could creatively express myself through my work, which wasn't happening. Those were the yeses, even though at the time I was looking through a very tiny pinhole and all I could see was not any more of this. Right? I was just seeing the end of this rather than seeing all of the things that would be on the other side of that decision. And that kind of abyss or unknown is, I think, masking a lot of things for us. As I said, fear is certainly one of those things. And as we look, I think you can see it's the desire to please. It was not a socially acceptable decision for me to leave that job. There was no one cheering for me and saying that was a great idea. A lot of people said that's a crazy idea. You should definitely reconsider. So I wasn't able to get kind of the consensus of support, which probably from a personal development standpoint is why it was such a pivotal decision, which was a good thing for me. I was saying yes to myself and no to everything that society wanted for me. Have you ever been in that position? It can be a big deal. I also needed to really look out for myself and prioritize myself over all of what society wanted for me, all of the big company, cachet and things like that. And again, it's not always easy for us to choose ourselves over the alternatives, especially in our consulting work when we don't feel like we really have that option. So what I want you to do today is really listen for where you are saying yes to things that you are done with or should not go for, and find that yes within you. So the first example that I wanted to share is all of us get these free opportunities to do things. Hey, it's a free marketing thing. Do you want to come and speak on a panel? Do you want to go and attend this networking event? Do you want to do all of these things? There's a lot of, or do you want to be a part of this thing? And even though we won't pay you, you'll get the exposure and, that kind of thing. A lot of times those can be hard to say no to. Sometimes they can be easy to say no to, but I really want you to practice saying no to things that you have a gut feeling about that are not a fit for you. It's really easy for us to look at criteria of like, well, is this going to get you the right kind of exposure? Is this going to get you in front of your audience? And all of those kinds of things. I also just want you to look at what's your gut instinct. Now, you may have a gut instinct that says, I really prefer status quo and I don't want to push my limits and get out of my comfort zone. Okay, that's another thing to inspect. But overall, I'd love for you to get to a place where you have honed your intuition to the point that you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then deal with the aftermath of that. Because what you might find is there's peer pressure to do it. A person or persons who are inviting you to do that are pressuring you. And this is where that desire to please comes in. And, any other pulls to do something another way than is your way, than trusting your own intuition and your own inner guidance on things. So that's the first example that I wanted to bring up with you. A pretty easy one, usually easy to turn down those kinds of things. But I find a lot of times, even in my situation, I will look and see something and I'll think, well, I have the time to do it, rather than saying, is this something I want to do? Is this something I feel called to do, inspired to do, anything like that? I'll kind of default to, oh, I'm available. That's not the decision criteria I want you to use. I want you to think, hey, is this exciting and interesting? And no matter how much they pressure you with this is great exposure or this is a great opportunity for you, do you feel it's a good opportunity for you? And if not, that's an easy no. Remember, no is a complete sentence. No, thank you is the polite Southern way I would do things, but you don't have to do anything, and you can just say no, no, thank you, and you don't have to give any explanation at all. The second example is turning down a potential client. This one is when we really get into the territory of activating a lot of triggers within us. You've gone through probably discovery sessions. Maybe they were referred by someone that you really like, and it seems like a big stretch to say no to that opportunity. But in the end, you've decided this is just not going to be a good fit for you and you don't want to do it. Good. Have the language to say that. Like, practice saying whatever you're going to say, but in the end, hey, thanks. I've thought about what we talked about, and in the end, I just don't think I'm the best person to work with you on this. The end. Or you can say, I have somebody that I would recommend that, and I will be sure to connect the two of you. Okay. So the bottom line is being able to walk away from potential clients. So why is this so hard? Well, it's obvious. It's very hard to turn down potential money for a lot of business owners, no matter how thriving they are. What I think is really critical is the times in my life when I have done this and it's been the hardest are the ones where, and you've probably heard this, you turn down the bad thing and behind them 3 really good things come along. It's almost always the case. I can't promise that, of course, but I just noticed that in my life and in the life of my clients when they say, they agonize and they don't want to do it. And then in the end, they turn down the thing that they don't think is a fit for them. And then suddenly good things show up. And by good things, I mean another really better fit client and another one after that and another one after that. So really pushing through the fear in this, really thinking through, if I did this, I would say you dodged a bullet when you turn down a client like that. If you push through and say yes to the wrong clients, you're going to suffer way more than in those moments when you have trepidation about saying no. So we fear saying no. We want to please them. We feel bad. I very often, when someone is just not able to afford my services, I feel terrible turning them down. And I also know I'm really not the best person to help them if they can't afford my services. So over the years, I've realized that that's a truer thing than, I should probably just cut my rates and work with them, right? That's almost never going to serve the people. And again, anecdotally from my own clients and from my peers, I've heard a lot of terrible stories about people who cut rates or did something as a favor for someone who wasn't able to quote unquote afford them. It means that they're just not at the level to receive your gifts and they should save up. They can go away and work for a year and come back and work with you. But in that moment, you have to say no. A key when you're saying no to potential clients is to realize that you can trust the universe to bring you something better. So this is a big faith piece of believing in your future, believing that you can create something to replace the thing that you've turned down. So checking in with that as you're saying no is going to be really key for you. Super hard thing here is when you're working with a client and you have to say no to the client. When does this come up? Well, when the client wants to have, let's say, meetings at times then you don't want to meet. It's too early, too late, weekends, when they are There's scope creep, meaning they want more and more work, which is outside of the scope of your agreement. This is a super hard time to say, actually, the hours that I work are this time to this time, so I'm not available to meet with you on Fridays, but I'd be happy to meet with you on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Really keeping the client within the bounds of the agreement. Now, obviously, you need to have made that the agreement and made that clear before you started to work together, but having to really defend your boundaries in work with a client can be hard. It can be really hard to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you at that time. Or actually that the thing that you'd like us to do is outside the scope of the current agreement. Would you like to have a conversation about the conditions for doing that? I mean, would you like me to make you a new proposal for that new work? So really guarding your boundaries is important for you. You have to stay in integrity with yourself. If you are constantly fudging on boundaries, you're teaching the client, I don't respect my own boundaries, so why should you? Right? So saying no, and also it really helps if you can say no to a small infringement, because that's usually what we refer to as the thin edge of the wedge. If you say yes to a small infringement, then usually those infringements get bigger and bigger and bigger as you go. And the client starts to ask for more and more. And then you've taught them to mistreat you. You can't blame them for that. If you're really strict with them, and strict doesn't mean unloving. It doesn't mean a lack of compassion. It just means, listen, I'm guarding the boundaries because I want to give you my best work. And I don't do that when I meet outside of work hours. I want to give you my best work. And I can't do that if my team is overwhelmed with doing new assignments. Right? So saying no at that time is about respecting yourself, having grown-up conversations, which can be super scary to have. And again, I call them grown-up conversations because it makes me laugh to say that. And I realize that sometimes in our business, we have to be grown-ups and say the hard things that we would really love to not have to say. But if you do that, you're going to find you have wonderful client relationships with clients who respect you. The fourth one here is about work encroaching into your personal time. And that's really on you. I've said we don't want to allow clients to take meeting times that get into our personal time, but you too can overwork. You can come in too early. You can work too late. You can work through lunches. You can take work with you on vacation, working on a Saturday or Sunday. Watch out for work encroaching into your personal time. Overwork makes you dumb, right? You get tired and then you make mistakes. Now, why do we do this? Why do we allow the work to expand like that? A little of this can be that fear. A little of it can be that I don't really respect my own personal time because I'm not sure what I would do with my personal time. I've had clients before where we've said, hey, it's time off. Why is time off important? What kind of things will you do with your free time? And they go, well, I like to spend time with my family. Okay, that's good. Really? Or are your kids at an age where they're fighting a lot and you really don't want to spend a lot of time with your family? That's a thing to look at. I've seriously seen that be an issue. What would you do with your spare time? Oh, well, in my free time, I would, there's a book I'd like to read. Good. Start reading that book. Make time for that. I'm having you sell yourself on why free time is actually important to you so that your work doesn't encroach on your free time. If you are going to come in on a Saturday and write something because Saturday is your best writing time, awesome. But you need to swap out that same amount of time from the weekday. So maybe take Tuesday afternoon off because you worked Saturday. Okay? Treat yourself as you would your favorite employee. And you wouldn't be abusive to your favorite employee. You'd say, hey, get out of here. Get out of the office. Go take an early dinner somewhere with your spouse. So say no to your work. Say no to yourself trying to overbook. And allowing the work to run into your personal time. This last one here is for when we want to fudge our agreements with ourselves. So kind of like when I was saying, personal time and work. Well, what if I decide I want to leave work at 5 p.m.? So that means that if I get an idea about something I want to do and it's 4:45, I have to say no. Let's work on that in the morning when we come back. If I have made a commitment to myself that I'm going to work out 3 times this week and I decide to go into work instead or to sleep in or something, I have to say, no, you promised. You promised yourself you were going to work out. So sometimes we have to be strict with ourselves and say no to ourselves. You can't let yourself off the hook. If I say, I don't feel like returning these phone calls, I'll do that tomorrow. No. Let's do this today in the first half of the day. Let's not avoid that. Why don't we say no to ourselves? Well, I would ask you to ask yourself that question. Why don't you say no to yourself? Are there times when you let yourself off the hook? Making and keeping agreements with ourselves is super powerful. And that's going to be the first way that you begin to build the kind of discipline that in self-employment we have to have. We have to have that because there's no boss to crack the whip, and you don't want to be motivated by an empty pipeline or your revenues dipping below your desired number, do you? No, we want to be motivated by love and joy and the parts of our business that we're looking forward to. I personally want to be motivated by yes. Yes is my favorite word. I love to hear yes, and I love to say yes. But what does that mean? It means that I have to say no a lot in order to be able to say yes to the things that are really and truly important to me. And that's the thing that I'm going to ask you to do. So, your 3 steps here. First, reflect on what you've heard. When are you saying no, and when are you avoiding saying no? What are the reasons behind it? Is it fear? Is it that you don't trust the universe? Is it that you're trying to please others? Is it that sometimes you don't really respect yourself the way that you should? So reflect on that and set yourself some goals around it. I want you to find your inner yes. What's the thing where you're like, actually, I really, really want to cultivate better relationships with my family. Actually, I really want to be fitter, and I want to spend more time outside of my office working on my fitness. Or I want to pursue spiritual activities. Whatever it is that you want to say yes to, maybe it's just really having joy in my life, and I'm going to say no to everything that isn't that. A lot of people will say if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. So think about what your deciders are in there. Like, what influences you to say hell yes or hell no? And last of all, I want you to practice saying no. So maybe you choose a little one, a safe, easy thing to say no to, perhaps a really obvious small thing that a client is asking for. Or maybe you have gotten fed up and you've been procrastinating and avoiding saying no, and now is the time. And you are just going to put your foot down and say no. Try to do it from a place of a larger yes, something you're saying more yes to, rather than from a place of anger. But consistently saying yes to things that you don't want to do is going to make you angry. It's a boundary violation, and relentlessly violating your boundaries and allowing your boundaries to be violated are going to make you mad. And when you're mad enough, you will say no. But that's a difficult time to say it, because that's not how everybody wants to be answered no. No, angry no. So if you can work on this proactively, then you're going to be able to get to a place where you can say no kindly. And that'll put more of yes into your life. This is the end of our season. I hope you've enjoyed the season, and that I hope you're going to take what you've learned today to use this word more often for your own benefit to create more profit and joy in your life and in your business. Thanks for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get video updates. Thanks.